You don't live here. Excuse me? This is my parking pass and my employee ID. I work here. Ma'am, you are parked in a restricted zone. The lease agreement states
that pass does not belong to her. Karen Holt said it loudly enough for every balcony above the garage to hear. Marisa Cole stood beside her sedan, an emergency room badge clipped to her navy scrubs. One officer held the plastic garage pass between two fingers. The other pulled Marissa's wrists behind her back. Metal closed around them. Across the lane, Karen folded her arms. She had called police from the management office, then come downstairs to watch. I told you she's been sneaking in, Karen said. People like her count on nobody checking. Marisa did not struggle. After 14 years in emergency rooms, she knew how quickly fear could be mistaken for resistance. She also knew a clock was running that no one in this garage could see. Her phone vibrated on the car hood. St. Vincent transfer desk. Officer, I have to answer that, she said. A patient transfer is waiting on my confirmation. Karen laughed. Now she's a doctor. I'm the nurse coordinating the receiving team. The younger officer glanced at her badge, but his partner was reading the dispatch notes reported stolen access credential, possible vehicle trespass. Each phrase made Karen's accusation sound official. The pass had opened this garage for 11 months. Its blue corner was split where Marisa had once bent it under a box of supplies. None of that mattered once Karen called it stolen. Who issued it? The officer asked. The building office. Karen cut in, not to her. Residents had gathered near the elevator. Nobody spoke. Check my lease, Marisa said. Karen's smile thinned. There is no valid lease under her name. I already checked. That changed Marisa's expression. Karen had searched the records first. She had chosen which screen to show police and which one to keep closed. Marisa's phone vibrated again. The sergeant glanced at the hospital name, then set it down. You can make calls after intake. By then the transfer window may be gone. That is not our issue. It will be somebody's issue. Marisa kept her voice level. Ask your watch commander to pull the residency verification file sent by hospital command staff. Do that before you book me. Karen's arms loosened and the sergeant noticed. What file, he asked. The one attached to the prior access complaint. There was no prior complaint, Karen snapped. She's stalling because the pass was copied. Marisa faced the sergeant. Please record that she said that. 23 minutes later, beneath the white lights of the precinct intake desk, Karen was still talking. She stood at the counter with a leather folder claiming she was protecting residents and enforcing rules. Marisa sat handcuffed to a steel bench. Her hospital badge and garage pass rested in clear evidence bags. Her phone lit again. Transfer hold expires in 8 minutes. Sergeant Marisa said the file. Karen slapped her folder on the counter. My statement is the file. No. It is why the real one matters. A door opened. Watch, Commander David Reese entered with 3 printed pages. He studied the split blue corner of the pass. Remove the cuffs, he said. Karen stared. You haven't heard my full statement. I've heard enough to know it left something out. The desk officer reached for his key. She does not live there, Karen insisted. Reese placed the first page face down. The second bore a hospital seal. The third carried a signature Karen recognized. The color left her face before a word was read aloud. As the cuff opened, Marisa rubbed one wrist. May I take the transfer call now? Reese slid the phone toward her. Yes, Nurse Cole. Karen reached for her folder, but an officer covered it with one hand. What are you doing? Preserving your statement, Reese said. A false report review starts tonight. Everyone at Intake Now watched Karen, not Marisa. But ending the arrest was only the first thing that file would do. Before the week was over, one resident would lose control of the building's complaint system. 2 officers would answer for ignoring a medical credential. And every access report there would be handled differently. Karen believed a garage pass could decide who belonged. To understand why and why, Marisa knew which hidden record would break that certainty. You have to go back 11 days to the quiet Sunday morning when the pass first stopped opening the gate. 11 days earlier, Marisa finished a 12-hour night shift while Cleveland was still dark. She drove home with the heater running low and a paper cup cooling between her hands. In 3 hours, she was supposed to return to St. Vincent for a volunteer training session on recognizing stroke symptoms. She had promised the neighborhood senior center she would teach it, and Marisa did not break promises simply because she was tired. At Lakeview Terrace, she lowered her window and pressed the garage pass against the reader. The light flashed red. She tried again. Red. A horn sounded behind her. Marisa pulled aside so another resident could enter, then tested the pass at the pedestrian door. That reader rejected it too. The blue plastic card was not valuable by itself. It carried no photograph and no printed name. Yet for Marisa, it represented 11 months of rebuilding a life that had nearly collapsed. The previous year, her mother, Elena, had suffered a severe stroke. Marisa had reduced her hospital hours to coordinate rehabilitation medications and transportation. The lost shifts consumed her savings, while the cost of converting Elena's old house for safe mobility became impossible. St. Vincent had offered Marisa a temporary apartment through its essential worker housing program. The arrangement let her live close to both the hospital and Elena's rehabilitation center. The lease was legitimate, but it was processed through the hospital's administrative office, rather than the building's ordinary rental system. Marisa had learned to carry copies of important records. Years in an emergency room had taught her that systems often failed at the worst possible moment. Still, she had never imagined needing paperwork to prove she belonged beside her own car. She parked on the street and walked around the building with her work bag cutting into one shoulder. Inside the lobby, Karen Holt was arranging notices on a community board. She wore a cream sweater and the silver keyring issued to members of the Residents Advisory Committee. "Garage reader rejected me," Marisa said. "Could you report it to management?" Karen continued pinning the notice. Maybe the system corrected an error. What error? Karen finally faced her. "Those spaces are for residents." "I'm a resident." "Then your name should appear in the directory." Marisa had heard variations of that sentence before. Karen had questioned delivery workers' home health aides and visiting relatives in the lobby. She called it security. The people she stopped called it something else when Karen was no longer nearby. "My apartment is provided through St. Vincent," Marisa said. "The building has the agreement." Karen studied the scrubs, the worn shoes, and the canvas work bag. "I know what people claim when they want access." Marisa felt the old pressure rise behind her ribs. She could challenge Karen in the lobby and arrive late to the senior center, or she could conserve the little energy she had left. "The pass worked last night," she said. "Then perhaps somebody noticed it should not." Karen returned to the board. Marisa used the elevator from the lobby and reached her apartment just after 7. The rooms were modest but clean. Beside the kitchen window stood 3 labeled medication boxes for Elena's weekend visit. A framed photograph showed her mother before the stroke, laughing at a community picnic with one hand on Marisa's shoulder. Marisa placed the rejected pass beside the photograph. Her mother noticed it when she arrived that afternoon with a rehabilitation aid. "Trouble?" Elena asked. Her speech had improved, though each word still required effort. "Just a broken reader." Elena touched the split blue corner with one finger. "Not broken." Marisa understood what she meant. Elena had spent 32 years working in a county records office. When a document or key stopped functioning only for one person, she never assumed machinery was the first cause. "I'll handle it Monday," Marisa said. Elena held her gaze. "Quiet is not safe." The words landed harder because Marisa knew what they cost her mother to say. Before the stroke, Elena had been the person neighbors called when an insurance letter made no sense or a public office claimed a form was missing. She taught Marisa to write down names, dates, and exact language. But after months of hospital bills and appeals, Marisa had become exhausted by every fight requiring proof that should never have been necessary. That evening, she opened her laptop. The resident portal still showed her apartment number, but the parking section displayed "Access Inactive." No explanation appeared. When she selected Request Review, the page identified Karen Holt as the advisory committee contact assigned to access complaints. Marisa took a screenshot. Then she emailed the building manager, attached the hospital housing confirmation, and requested written clarification. She copied the hospital administrator who had arranged her placement. At 9:14 Monday morning, management replied with one sentence: "Your residency status is currently under verification." No one explained who had questioned it. At the hospital, Marisa placed the garage pass in the smallest pocket of her scrub top. During difficult shifts, her fingers found the split corner without thought. It reminded her that after months of sleeping in chairs beside Elena's bed, she had finally secured a stable home close enough to help without abandoning her patients. By Wednesday, the pass remained inactive. Marisa parked 4 blocks away and paid daily street rates she could not afford. On Thursday, someone left a typed warning beneath her windshield wiper: unauthorized persons may be reported for trespass. There was no signature. That afternoon, the hospital housing administrator called. Someone submitted a residency challenge, he said. I sent the command office's verification file directly to management. Your lease is valid. Who challenged it? A pause followed. The request came through the residence committee. Marisa already knew the name. She documented the call, saved her medical shift log, and printed the lease statement. Then she placed everything in a plain folder beside the garage pass. She was no longer waiting for Karen's permission to belong. But the following Sunday, Marisa entered the garage behind another resident because she needed supplies from her car before work. Karen was watching from the management office window. Within minutes, Marisa saw her lift a phone. This time, Karen was not calling the building manager. Karen Holt had spent 6 years making herself indispensable at Lakeview Terrace. She organized holiday collections, welcomed new owners with printed rulebooks, and attended every residence advisory meeting. When a package disappeared or a gate remained open, Karen already had a list of suspects before management reviewed the cameras. To many residents, that looked like commitment. What they rarely saw was how quickly Karen's kindness vanished when somebody questioned her authority. She had applied twice for the paid community manager position. Both times, the property company chose someone with professional housing experience. The advisory committee was the closest Karen had come to controlling the building, and she guarded that small territory fiercely. Her silver keyring opened the meeting room and management office during designated hours. It did not give her the legal power to cancel a lease or remove a resident. But the building's access software did. Committee members could submit temporary deactivation requests for suspected security violations. Management was supposed to review each request within 24 hours. Until then, the challenged pass remained inactive. The rule had been created after several vehicles were broken into. Karen discovered that the system accepted a committee member's report before requiring supporting evidence. Most people never noticed. Marisa did because she had spent her career watching small, unchecked assumptions become dangerous decisions. On Friday afternoon, she visited the management office during her break. Property manager Paul Wynn sat behind a glass partition studying the same lease statement Marisa had emailed days earlier. This confirms my apartment, she said. Why is my pass still disabled? Paul adjusted his glasses. The residency challenge has to complete its review cycle. You have the hospital agreement. I do. Then, what remains to be reviewed? Paul lowered his voice. Karen reported that the pass may have been transferred to an unauthorized occupant. Marisa placed her hospital identification beside the lease statement. The hospital assigned that apartment to me. My name is on this page. The standard resident directory doesn't show it, because the hospital is listed as the master tenant. Paul tapped the paper with one finger. He understood the explanation. His expression made that clear. Yet restoring the pass would mean rejecting Karen's complaint before the property company's compliance office closed it. I don't want to override procedure, he said. Procedure already overrode evidence. A chair scraped behind Marisa. Karen had entered through the side door. This is exactly the behavior I warned you about, she told Paul. Pressure demands special treatment. Marisa gathered her documents. Asking to enter the building where I live is not special treatment. Karen's public smile appeared as 2 residents approached the mailboxes. We all appreciate what nurses do, she said, raising her voice. But hospital employment does not exempt anyone from security rules. The residents heard only that sentence. One glanced at Marisa's documents and quickly lowered his eyes. By the time Marisa left, Karen had made the dispute sound like a generous volunteer defending the building from an impatient outsider. That evening, a notice appeared beside the elevator. Do not allow unknown persons to follow your vehicle through the garage gate. No name was printed beneath it. None was needed. When Marisa entered the lobby after her shift, a neighbor who had once held the elevator for her pressed the close button. The doors shut between them. Marisa stood alone with her work bag and understood how efficiently suspicion traveled. Karen did not need to prove that Marisa had stolen anything. She needed only to make other people afraid of being the person who let her inside. At St. Vincent, the pressure followed her in quieter forms. The housing office warned that unresolved complaints could trigger a placement review. Marisa could challenge the report, but the formal process might take 30 days. If the building classified the allegation as intentional misuse, the hospital could move her to another unit across the city. That would place her 40 minutes from Elena's rehabilitation center and nearly an hour from the hospital during winter traffic. Marisa could not simply walk away. Her mother's next mobility assessment was scheduled in 2 weeks. If Elena met the strength requirements, she could begin weekend stays at Marissa's apartment. The bathroom rails were installed. The medication station was ready. Moving now would undo months of careful work. On Saturday morning, Elena sat at Marisa's kitchen table practicing words from a therapy card. Door, Elena said. Marisa nodded. Key. Another nod. Elena touched the inactive pass. Home. Marisa's throat tightened. Yes, she said. Home. She did not tell her mother about the possible transfer. Instead, she opened the plain folder and reviewed every page. The lease statement confirmed the apartment assignment. Her medical log established where she had been during every shift. Karen claimed the pass was being misused. The hospital administrator's email said a residency verification file had been transmitted after the first complaint. Yet one detail bothered Marisa. The email showed that management received the file 3 days before Paul claimed the review could not be completed. Someone had seen the verification and allowed the pass to remain disabled. Marisa called Paul. His voicemail answered. She sent a short email asking him to preserve the access history and identify every person who had opened the verification file. Within 10 minutes, Karen called her personal phone. Marisa let it go to voicemail. You are turning a minor security review into a hostile situation, Karen said in the recording. If you continue entering restricted areas, I will treat it as deliberate trespass. Marisa saved the message. On Sunday, St. Vincent asked her to report early. A trauma patient required transfer to a neurological unit, and Marisa was assigned to coordinate the receiving team once a bed became available. Her work bag was locked inside her car. She entered the garage behind an elderly resident who recognized her and raised the gate. Marisa retrieved the bag, placed the folder beneath the driver's seat, and checked the time. Then, Karen emerged from the management office holding her phone. You were warned not to enter, she said. My vehicle is registered here. Your pass is inactive. Because you challenged it. Karen's face hardened. Give me the pass. No. That single word drew people toward the balconies. Karen lifted her phone and announced that an unauthorized person was refusing to surrender stolen property. When she described Marisa's clothing and car to the dispatcher, she spoke with the confidence of someone certain the system would accept her version first. The police cruiser arrived 4 minutes later. An officer approached Karen before speaking to Marisa. He saw the silver keyring, heard the words, Advisory Committee, and began writing. Karen pointed toward Marisa. She followed someone through the gate, she said. That pass was never issued to her. Marisa reached for the folder inside her car. The second officer blocked the door. Keep your hands where I can see them. Karen's accusation had just become the official story, and the only record capable of stopping it was already inside a system that somebody had tried to keep closed. Marisa kept both hands visible. My lease statement is inside the folder beneath the driver's seat, she said. You can retrieve it without me reaching into the vehicle. The older officer, Sergeant Nolan Price, asked Karen whether she represented building management. I chair the security committee, Karen replied. That was not an answer, but Nolan accepted it as one. He took the folder from Marisa's car and opened it on the hood. The lease statement appeared first, followed by the hospital housing confirmation and her printed email chain. Karen moved beside him. That lease is misleading, she said. The hospital rents the unit. She is not the legal tenant. It identifies me as the authorized occupant, Marisa said. Karen pointed at the access warning she had printed. Authorized occupants still have to follow security rules. She entered after her credential was revoked. Temporarily deactivated pending review, Marisa corrected. Nolan closed the folder. We can sort that out at the precinct. You can sort it out here, she said. Call the hospital administrator listed on the first page. Nolan's patience shortened. Ma'am, I need you to stop directing the investigation. Marisa had heard that tone in emergency rooms. It appeared when an exhausted person asked one question too many, and the person with authority decided discomfort was defiance. She lowered her voice. I'm asking you to verify evidence before treating an accusation as fact. The second officer, Daniel Ruiz, examined the pass. He compared its number with the warning Karen had brought from the management office. The numbers match, Ruiz said. Karen nodded quickly. Because that is the stolen pass. It matches the pass assigned to my apartment, Marisa said. Ruiz hesitated. The same detail supported two opposite stories. Instead of resolving the conflict, Nolan placed the card inside an evidence sleeve. A resident began recording from the elevator entrance. Karen noticed the phone and raised her voice. I have tried to handle this privately for days. She keeps exploiting her hospital uniform so people will be afraid to question her. Marisa felt the accusation strike precisely where Karen intended. The Navy scrubs were not a costume. They carried the memory of patients whose hands she had held when their families could not enter treatment rooms. They represented years of double shifts, missed holidays, and the months she had worked while Elena relearned how to speak. Karen reduced all of it to a trick. A woman near the elevator whispered, if she really lived here, why was her pass shut off? That was how the lie hardened. The punishment was being treated as proof of the offense. Marisa's phone rang inside the car. Nolan checked the screen. It says St. Vincent, he told her. I'm coordinating a neurological transfer. Please put it on speaker. Karen gave a sharp breath. This is a security investigation, not her workplace. Nolan allowed the call to ring out. A voicemail arrived seconds later. Marisa could see only the opening words on the screen. Bed confirmed. Treatment authorization required by. The rest was hidden. If she abandoned the garage dispute and went to work, Karen's report could enter the record without challenge. If she stayed, a patient's transfer might miss its narrow authorization window. Karen appeared to understand the choice. You should leave, she said. Walk out now, and perhaps management will treat this as confusion instead of trespassing. What happens to my pass? That depends on whether you cooperate. What happens to my apartment? Karen's eyes moved toward the residents listening nearby. The committee can recommend termination of any placement that creates a safety concern. There it was. The garage pass was never the real objective. Karen wanted Marisa to surrender the residency itself. Marisa could have taken the offer. She could have walked to the hospital, protected the transfer, and fought the housing decision later through emails and hearings. That would have been the easier choice for everyone except the next person Karen decided did not belong. She faced Ruiz, whose body camera light was blinking. Officer, please document 3 things. I have provided a lease statement. I have requested verification from the issuing hospital. And Karen Holt has just threatened my housing if I refuse to surrender the pass. I did not threaten her, Karen said. You said the committee could recommend termination for a safety concern. What safety concern? Karen glanced at Nolan. Her behavior right now. Marisa's voice remained calm. My behavior is requesting that you verify a record. Ruiz wrote the statement down. Nolan reopened the folder and found the medical log. It listed Marisa's shifts, transfer assignments, and volunteer hours from the previous 2 weeks. This doesn't prove residency, he said. It is supporting evidence, Marisa replied. Karen's complaint claims the pass was being used by someone else during my shifts. The garage entry times overlap with times I was off duty and entering the building myself. Nolan scanned the columns, but Karen seized on one entry. Here, she said, Tuesday at 6:42 p.m., the pass was used while she claimed she was at the hospital. Marisa studied the line. The hospital log showed her shift ending at 6:15. The garage record marked entry 27 minutes later. Driving from St. Vincent to Lakeview Terrace usually took 18 minutes. That entry supports me, Marisa said. Karen shook her head. Or it proves these papers cannot be trusted. Nolan did not calculate the travel time. He saw conflicting documents, an inactive pass, and a committee representative insisting that a crime had occurred. The partial record meant to protect Marisa was being used to deepen suspicion. Her phone rang once more. This time, the transfer coordinator left a message marked urgent. Ruiz shifted his weight. Sergeant, maybe we should call the hospital. Karen interrupted before Nolan could answer. She has already wasted enough police time. If you call every employer named on a document, anybody can talk their way out of an arrest. Marisa watched Nolan close the folder again. Something inside her settled. She had spent months choosing silence because every confrontation demanded energy she needed for her patients and her mother. But Elena had been right. Silence had not protected their home. It had only given Karen an empty space in which to write the story first. Marisa spoke directly to Nolan's body camera. "I am formally asking you to contact the watch commander and retrieve the command staff residency verification file transmitted after the first complaint. I am also asking that my lease statement, medical log, and Karen Holt's voicemail be preserved." Karen's confidence flickered. Nolan caught the change but mistook it for irritation. "We are done debating this in the garage," he said. He instructed Ruiz to place the folder with Marisa's property. Then he asked Karen to provide a written statement at the precinct. Karen's smile returned. As Nolan reached for his handcuffs, Marisa did not retreat or raise her voice. She gave Ruiz the name of the hospital administrator. She repeated the date the verification file had been sent. Finally, she stated the patient transfer deadline so the body camera would preserve the cost of every delayed minute. Karen leaned close enough for the residents to hear her final cut. "You can wear any uniform you want," she said. "It still doesn't make this your home." Nolan told Marisa to turn around. She did. But before the first cuff closed, Ruiz glanced at the hospital seal inside the folder and quietly copied the administrator's number onto his hand. Karen thought the argument was over. She did not know that Marisa had just forced the only honest path through the system into the official record. The cuffs closed beside Marisa's car while residents watched from the balconies. Her hospital identification did not stop the arrest. Neither did the lease statement. Nolan placed both in an evidence bag, and Karen followed the cruiser to the precinct with her written complaint tucked beneath one arm. The drive took 12 minutes. For Marisa, it consumed nearly half the remaining transfer window. Awed Intake Officer Ruiz set her folder on the counter. Nolan summarized the incident as a disputed credential and suspected trespass. Karen stood close enough to interrupt whenever his description left room for doubt. She was told repeatedly that she had no authorization, Karen said. She entered anyway. Marisa sat on the steel bench and listened as a complicated lie became a simple report. Watch Commander David Reese had not yet arrived. The desk sergeant, Linda Barrett, reviewed Karen's committee identification and accepted her leather folder. "Are you employed by the property company?" Barrett asked. "I act on management's behalf in security matters." Again, Karen avoided answering directly. Paul Wynn had not responded to police calls. The property company's weekend line played a recorded message. Without a manager available, Karen was treated as the building's most reliable authority. She enjoyed the position. When Barrett asked whether Marisa had ever been warned, Karen produced the notice placed on Marisa's windshield and the general warning from the elevator. "She knew the pass was invalid," Karen said. "It was disabled after she challenged my residency," Marisa replied. Karen's pen paused over her statement. "I challenged an unauthorized occupant." Barrett raised one hand. "You'll both have a chance to give your versions." But Marisa did not have time for a full interview. Her phone rang inside the property tray. The hospital transfer desk appeared on the screen, then disappeared. A message followed. "Transfer hold expires in 14 minutes. I need to return that call," Marisa said. "A patient is waiting for neurological treatment." Nolan removed his jacket and placed it over the back of a chair. "We still have to complete intake. The hospital can confirm the transfer and my residency. We are contacting them." Ruiz had already called the administrator's number. He reached voicemail twice. On the third attempt, a hospital operator said the administrator was away from his desk but would be paged. Karen watched the clock. "If her employer wants to defend her, they can do it later," she said. "The building cannot ignore a crime because she claims someone needs her." Marisa studied Karen across the counter. "You knew I was on call." Karen's expression revealed nothing. "The committee received your parking schedule as part of the access review," Marisa continued. "You knew exactly when to make this report. That schedule proved you were rarely home. It proved I work nights." Karen gave a weary sigh for the officers as if Marisa were exhausting everyone with excuses. Then she opened her folder and removed a prepared committee form. "I also need police confirmation that she was detained," she told Barrett. "Management requires it before an emergency placement recommendation." Marisa recognized the form. It requested immediate suspension of her housing access. Karen had prepared it before calling police. The arrest was not the result she expected. It was the result she had planned to use. "You brought a termination request to the garage?" Marisa asked. "I brought a safety report. My mother is beginning weekend rehabilitation visits at that apartment." Karen shrugged. Then, perhaps she should stay somewhere properly authorized. The words entered Marisa more sharply than the cuffs. Elena had worked for months to climb 3 steps without assistance. She had practiced using the modified bathroom and memorized the path from the bedroom to the kitchen. The apartment was not merely a convenient place to sleep. It was the first space where Elena could begin living as a person again instead of being managed as a patient. Karen knew none of that. She did not need to know. Control had made Marisa's life irrelevant to her. Barrett accepted the suspension form but did not sign it. "This is a police desk, not a housing office. I only need the incident number. If an arrest is approved, you'll receive it later." Karen's smile tightened. "She is already in handcuffs. That is detention. Booking has not been authorized." The distinction irritated Karen. She crossed to the public waiting area where 2 Lakeview residents had arrived after seeing the arrest. One was still recording. Karen began explaining that the committee had prevented a serious security breach. Marisa heard her own life described as a victory for the building. Her phone rang again. "Transfer hold expires in 8 minutes. Barrett glanced at the message. "What happens if she misses it?" Ruiz asked. Marisa answered before anyone else could. "The receiving bed may be released. The patient remains in an emergency department that cannot provide the required neurological procedure." Nolan shifted uneasily. "Can another nurse authorize it? Another coordinator could take over if the hospital knows I'm unavailable. Nobody there knows I'm handcuffed to a bench." Ruiz faced Barrett. "Let her answer on speaker." Karen returned to the counter. "If you uncuff her every time she creates urgency, she will keep creating urgency." Marisa lifted her restrained hands as far as the chain allowed. "I did not create a patient's condition." The waiting area quieted. Barrett reached for the property tray, but Nolan stopped her. "Commander should approve it. This has already become complicated." Marisa closed her eyes for one breath. She had remained calm because calm preserved choices. Now the system was using that calm as permission to delay. She could shout, pull against the restraint, and prove Karen's description of her. Or she could watch the transfer window disappear while everyone followed a process built on an unverified report. She chose a third path. "Officer Ruiz," she said, "your body camera recorded the administrator's name and the transmission date. Please contact Hospital Command Operations, not the housing office. Ask for the residency file attached to case LV-1710. Ruiz remembered the number Marisa had stated in the garage. Nolan frowned. "Where did that case number come from?" "The administrator's email. It is in my folder." Karen spoke too quickly. "That file has nothing to do with this pass." Everyone behind the counter heard her. Marisa focused on Karen. "You said there was no prior complaint." Karen's mouth remained open for half a second before she recovered. "I said there was no legitimate complaint." "No, you said there was no prior complaint at all." Ruiz retrieved Marisa's folder and found the email. At the bottom of the page was the reference number and a delivery receipt from Hospital Command Operations. He read the recipient address aloud. Paul Wynn had received it. A second recipient had opened it the following morning using advisory committee credentials. The user's surname appeared only as an initial on the printed receipt. K. Holt. Karen reached toward the page. "That proves nothing. Committee members review security correspondence." "It proves you knew the file existed," Marisa said. Karen's prepared expression finally broke. She demanded that Barrett proceed with booking before Marisa could manufacture another delay. Nolan began completing the intake authorization, though his pen moved more slowly now. Ruiz called Hospital Command Operations. This time, someone answered. He identified himself, gave the case number, and listened. His posture changed. "Yes," he said. "Send the complete file directly to the watch commander." Across the desk, a printer woke. The first page emerged bearing the seal of St. Vincent's command office. Karen stopped talking. Then the secure door opened, and Commander David Reese entered as the remaining pages slid into the tray. He read the heading once. "Do not book her," he said. Commander Reese placed the first printed page on the intake desk. Karen recovered before anyone else spoke. "A hospital memo cannot override property records," she said. The pass was inactive when she entered. Reese read the heading aloud. "Essential Worker Residency Verification. Case LV-17." He asked Barrett to remove Marisa's handcuffs. Karen protested that the document might have been produced after the incident. Reese checked the transmission record. It was created 9 days ago, he said. Lakeview Terrace received it 8 days ago. That does not prove she saw it, Nolan said, glancing toward Karen. Officer Ruiz opened Marisa's email and indicated the access receipt. Advisory credentials opened the file at 7:32 the next morning. Karen pressed both palms against the counter. Committee members received dozens of documents. Opening something does not mean I reviewed every page. A voice came from the public waiting area. I watched her print it. The resident who had recorded the garage arrest lowered his phone. He lived across from the management office and had entered that morning to report a leaking pipe. She was standing at the printer, he said. I remember the hospital seal because she asked whether I thought hospital employees should receive special housing privileges. Karen's head moved sharply toward him. You misunderstood a private conversation. You told me the building was becoming a dormitory for people who didn't pay normal rent. The witness had confirmed one detail, but Karen still treated it as a personal disagreement. Reese continued reading. The first page identified St. Vincent as the master tenant and Marisa Cole as the sole authorized occupant of apartment 4C. It confirmed her right to use the garage, the pedestrian entrances, and all resident facilities for the full term of the placement. The second page explained why the arrangement existed. Marisa was listed as an essential emergency room nurse assigned to overnight trauma coverage. Her proximity to the hospital was part of a continuity plan designed to keep experienced staff available during transfer emergencies. Beneath that paragraph was another designation: Family Rehabilitation Accommodation Approved. Reese paused. The file documented that Marisa's mother was recovering from a stroke and would begin supervised weekend visits at the apartment. It confirmed that St. Vincent had funded accessibility modifications so Elena could practice living outside institutional care. The apartment Karen called unauthorized had been prepared as part of a woman's path back to independence. Marisa listened without lowering her gaze. The file did more than prove where she slept. It placed every quiet burden Karen had dismissed into a record no one in the room could ignore. Karen searched for another objection. None of that excuses bypassing a locked gate. Reese lifted the third page. No, but this explains why the gate rejected her. The page contained the access history for apartment 4C at 6:11. On the Sunday morning, when Marisa's pass first failed, Karen had submitted a temporary deactivation request. The stated reason was suspected credential sharing. 24 hours later, the hospital verification cleared the allegation. The system should have restored the pass automatically. It did not. At 7:46 that morning, 12 minutes after Karen opened the verification file, someone, using her advisory credentials, changed the complaint classification from unconfirmed sharing to active theft investigation. That change extended the deactivation and prevented automatic restoration. Karen stared at the page. Someone must have used my login. Were your credentials compromised? Reese asked. No. Did you report unauthorized access? No, because I did not know this entry existed. Ruiz indicated the typed warning recovered from Marisa's windshield. Its internal reference number matched the reclassified complaint. Karen had printed that notice 6 minutes after the change. The room understood before she did. She had known Marisa's residency was valid. She had kept the pass inactive, used the inactive status as evidence of wrongdoing, and then called police when Marisa entered the garage attached to her legal home. Karen's voice rose. She still followed another vehicle through the gate. That is prohibited. Marisa stood beside the bench, one wrist marked red from the cuff. The gate rejected me because you disabled my pass after reading proof that it belonged to me. I was protecting the residents. From what? Karen had no answer that could survive the record. Reese asked Barrett to place Karen's written statement beside the file. The statement declared that no prior residency verification existed and that Marisa had fabricated her connection to the apartment after being confronted. Both claims were now demonstrably false. Karen tried to pull the folder back. Officer Ruiz covered it with one hand. Leave the statement where it is. This is my private property. It was submitted as evidence. Karen's control of the room disappeared all at once. She demanded a lawyer, threatened to call the property company, and accused the resident witness of retaliation. Reese allowed her to speak until each claim was recorded. Then Marisa took the decisive step. "Commander, I want my medical log entered with the residency file." Nolan frowned. "The housing record already clears the pass. The log shows why the original allegation was impossible." Marisa opened the relevant page herself. Karen's first complaint claimed the credential had been used by another person on 4 evenings when Marisa was supposedly working. The medical log recorded the exact end of each shift. Garage entries occurred 18 to 31 minutes later, matching her ordinary drive home. One entry carried a supervisor's notation that Marisa left the hospital at 6:15 after completing a transfer handoff. The garage registered her pass at 6:42. It was the same entry Karen had pointed to as suspicious. The factual confirmation was simple. The pass had not appeared in 2 places at once. Marisa had used it after work exactly as she said. Ruiz compared the remaining times. "They all fit the route," he said. Nolan's shoulders dropped. He finally understood that the conflicting documents had never been confusing. He had allowed Karen's certainty to make them appear that way. Marisa faced Reese. "I am requesting 4 actions. End the detention. Correct the incident record before it enters any background system. Preserve the body camera footage and Karen's voicemail. And notify the hospital that I was prevented from answering a time-sensitive transfer call." Her power did not come from shouting. It came from naming exactly what the truth required. Reese agreed to each request. Barrett marked the detention canceled and recorded that no probable cause existed for booking. Ruiz returned Marisa's hospital badge and phone. Nolan removed the garage pass from the evidence sleeve and placed it in her hand. The blue corner was still split. It had not changed. Only the people deciding what it meant had changed. Marisa immediately called St. Vincent. The transfer coordinator answered on the first ring. "This is Marisa Cole. I was detained and could not respond. Is the bed still available?" 3 minutes, the coordinator said. "We held it for 3 more minutes." Marisa moved to the end of the counter, opened the patient transfer application, and confirmed the receiving team. Her voice became the steady clinical voice she used in every emergency. The authorization went through with less than a minute remaining. Behind her, consequences began without spectacle. Reese ordered a supervisory review of Nolan's and Ruiz's actions. He instructed detectives to preserve the garage footage access log's voicemail and Karen's written statement for a false report investigation. Karen was not dragged away. She was advised that she was no longer free to alter or remove submitted evidence and that investigators would schedule a formal interview. That procedural calm frightened her more than public shouting would have. Reese then called Paul Wynn. Until the property company completed an outside review, all advisory access privileges were to be frozen. Karen could no longer open the management office, alter a complaint, or view a resident's private file. Her silver keyring lay on the counter. For 6 years, its sound had announced authority in the halls of Lakeview Terrace. Now it sounded like loose metal when Barrett sealed it inside an evidence envelope. Marisa ended the hospital call and faced Karen. "I did not ask you to like me," she said. "I asked you to stop using a system to erase me." Karen lowered her eyes. The record had done more than end an arrest. It had shown everyone exactly how control disguised itself as protection, and Marisa had forced that truth into the open before either her patient or her family lost what could not be restored. Marisa returned to Lakeview Terrace shortly after midnight. Commander Reese arranged for an officer to drive her back because her car remained in the garage. No handcuffs, no property bag. Her hospital badge was clipped to her scrubs and the garage pass rested in her palm. The gate reader still flashed red. Officer Ruiz had warned her that the building system had not yet been corrected. This time, however, the red light was not treated as proof that Marisa was the problem. Paul Wynn met her at the entrance and opened the gate manually. "I should have restored your access when I received the hospital file," he said. "I let a committee procedure become more important than the record in front of me." Marisa was too tired for an elaborate apology. "I need written confirmation that my housing is secure. You'll have it before morning, and the access history must be preserved. It already is." Paul offered to escort her upstairs. Marisa declined. She crossed the garage alone, carrying the same work bag Karen had called evidence of trespassing. Near her car, faint impressions from the police cruiser's tires remained on the concrete. Marisa paused there only long enough to retrieve Elena's medication folder from the back seat. Then she went home. The property company froze Karen's advisory privileges that night. By Monday afternoon, outside counsel had begun reviewing every access complaint she had submitted during the previous 2 years. The review found that Marisa was not the first person Karen had targeted. 3 home health aides had been repeatedly reported as unauthorized visitors despite valid registrations. A delivery driver had been banned after Karen described him as threatening, though security footage showed no confrontation. 2 residents using hospital-supported leases had received warnings that ordinary tenants never saw. Not every complaint was false. The pattern was still impossible to dismiss. Karen was removed from the Residents Advisory Committee pending the investigation. She lost access to the management office private residency records and the software she had used to keep Marisa's pass inactive. The police investigation moved more carefully. Detectives compared Karen's written statement with the access records, her voicemail, and the body camera footage. After review by the city prosecutor, she was formally cited for filing a false report and referred to a hearing. No dramatic sentence arrived overnight. The process required testimony document authentication and an opportunity for Karen to respond, but she could no longer control the evidence or the room in which it would be heard. Sergeant Nolan received a formal counseling notice for failing to verify readily available records before detention. Officer Ruiz's body camera footage showed that he had preserved Marisa's requests and contacted the hospital command office, but the department still required both officers to complete additional training on housing disputes and credibility assessment. Commander Reese personally corrected the incident record. No arrest appeared on Marisa's background report. The hospital placed a letter in her employment file confirming that the delayed transfer call resulted from wrongful detention, not professional neglect. The neurological patient received the transfer. Treatment began that evening. Marisa never learned the patient's name beyond what her role required. That was the nature of her work. Sometimes the most important victory in a hospital was that a stranger reached the right room before a clock expired. Lakeview Terrace changed too. Committee members could no longer deactivate a credential on their own. Every complaint now required independent management review, written supporting evidence and direct notice to the resident before access was restricted except during a documented emergency. Hospital leases and other non-standard housing agreements were added to a protected verification system. Police called to the property received a management contact who could confirm residency without exposing private medical information. The company also created a bias report procedure, allowing residents, caregivers, delivery workers, and service employees to document patterns of selective enforcement. Marisa agreed to speak at one meeting. She did not describe Karen as a monster. That would have made the lesson too easy. Systems become dangerous when one person can create suspicion, impose the punishment, and then use that punishment as proof, she told the room. The answer is not to find a kinder person to hold that power. The answer is to build a process that requires evidence. Paul Wynn wrote the sentence into the new policy draft. 3 weeks after the arrest, Elena arrived for her first full weekend visit. She entered through the lobby using a walker. Each movement was slow, deliberate, and entirely her own. Several residents greeted her, including the neighbor who had closed the elevator doors on Marisa weeks earlier. He held them open this time, inside apartment 4C. Elena examined the safety rails, the medication station, and the wide path Marisa had cleared between the bedroom and kitchen. Then she noticed 2 garage passes on the table. The property company had issued Marisa a new credential with her photograph and name. Beside it lay the old blue pass with the split corner. "Keep," Elena asked. Marisa considered throwing it away. Instead, she placed it in a small wooden box with her mother's rehabilitation cards and the first apartment key. "Yes," she said, "but we don't need to carry it anymore." That evening, Elena walked from the kitchen to the window without assistance. Marisa stayed close enough to help, but did not reach for her. Outside headlights moved through the garage entrance as the gate opened and closed. On Monday morning, Marisa left for another hospital shift. She pressed the new pass against the reader. The light changed from red to green. The gate lifted, but Marisa did not hurry through. She waited until it was fully open, then drove into the Cleveland Morning, while Elena watched from the apartment window above. Karen had tried to make belonging depend on her approval. Marisa had proven that dignity does not come from being quietly tolerated. It comes from truth being placed where control can no longer hide it. What would you have done if someone used a system to erase your right to your own home? Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more stories about ordinary people who choose truth without surrendering their dignity.